So here's a thought. What if the very system we designed to be fair, the one for finding the absolute best person for the job, what if that system is actually holding us back? That's the core puzzle we're tackling today, this paradox that sits right at the heart of our organizations. They call it the merit trap. Okay, let's dive in. And hey, welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5361. That's Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. Today, we are digging into the required reading from Foley and Williamson called Managerial Perspectives on Implicit Bias, Affirmative Action, and Merit. Just think of this as our session to get us all on the same page.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to get our heads around the merit principle, the ideal we're all shooting for. Then, we'll look at a pretty significant crack that's appeared in that ideal. From there, we'll explore two big solutions organizations are trying out, which leads us straight into the real mess of it all, the manager's dilemma. And finally, we'll get to the biggest idea of all. What if the problem isn't the solutions, but the very idea of merit itself?
Okay, first up, the merit principle. You gotta understand this, because it's basically the bedrock, the foundation for most public service organizations today. It's supposed to be the gold standard. So what is it, really? Well, the merit principle is this simple but really powerful idea that people should get hired and promoted based on what they can do. That's it. Their skills, their capabilities. Think of it this way. If your house is on fire, you want the firefighter who is the strongest and the fastest, right? You don't care about anything else. You just want the best person for that specific job. That's merit in a nutshell. And this is why it's so important. The whole point of merit was to act as a shield against things like patronage, hiring your nephew just because he's your nephew, and against obvious bias or any other kind of unfair advantage. It's supposed to create a perfectly level playing field for everybody. But, and this is the big but, is that playing field really level? And that leads us right here to a crack in that solid foundation of merit. And that crack has a name, the stubborn, ongoing problem of inequality. Now let's look at the data, because this is where it gets really interesting. This study zeroed in on the Australian public service. And get this, women make up 59% of their entire workforce, a clear majority. But when you look at the top two tiers of leadership, the big jobs, they only held 36% of those spots in 2015. So, where'd all the women go on the way up the ladder? That's the central mystery here.
And this brings us to the million-dollar question. If your system is truly based on merit, if it's working the way it's supposed to, how do you explain a gap like that? I mean, if you're just picking the most qualified person every single time, the numbers should look totally different, right?
Well, the most common explanation that researchers have landed on is something called implicit bias. It's like those little shortcuts our brains take without us even realizing it. You see a man in scrubs, your brain might just automatically think doctor. You see a woman in scrubs, it might think nurse. It's not malicious, you're not a bad person for it, but those unconscious stereotypes can seriously tilt the playing field, making a true meritocracy almost impossible. Okay, so organizations aren't blind. They see the data, they see the problem, and they're trying to fix it. This brings us to the two big ways they're trying to tackle this, through training and through action.
So what are they actually doing? Well, the first big idea is implicit bias training. The logic here is pretty simple. If we can just make managers aware of their own hidden biases, maybe they can start to correct for them. The second approach is affirmative action, which is really just a big umbrella term for any policy that's designed to actively support underrepresented groups and fix that imbalance we saw in the numbers.
And what does affirmative action actually look like in the real world? Well, it can be a bunch of different things. It could be special leadership training programs just for women, or setting non-binding gender targets for senior roles. It could mean making sure hiring panels have both men and women on them, or even letting a manager pick a female candidate if she's just as qualified as a male one. And here is where it gets really, really messy. Because when you roll out these solutions, you create a massive dilemma for the managers who actually have to implement them. It becomes this huge clash of deeply held beliefs. And the researchers found that a lot of managers, like Ivy here, they get it on some level. They accept that bias is real. They even worry it might be affecting their own decisions. I mean, listen to her quote. When it's unconscious, it's hard to know. You can just feel the struggle, right? The awareness is there, but that doesn't make it any easier to solve.
And this is where you see managers split into two different camps. On one side, you have people who see affirmative action as something that violates merit. To them, it feels fundamentally unfair. They believe the best person should get the job, plain and simple, and they worry about tokenism. But then you have the other side. They see affirmative action as something that corrects for a broken merit system. They argue it's the only way to counteract all those hidden biases and create the level playing field we were supposed to have all along.
And this quote from Chloe, a senior manager, just hits the nail on the head. For her and for many like her, the principle of merit is sacred. Anything that looks like a gender target feels like a betrayal of that core ideal. So this is the dilemma. Managers are caught between knowing there's a problem with bias and defending their deeply held belief in merit.
So, how do we get out of this mess? Well, the authors of the paper argue that maybe we're all fighting about the wrong thing. Maybe the problem isn't affirmative action. Maybe the real solution is to take a step back and rethink the very idea of merit itself.
And this quote they cite in the paper it's everything. It suggests that our old rigid idea of merit isn't a tool for fairness, it's a shield. A shield that lets us pretend our system is perfectly objective even when the data is screaming that it's not. And that shield, in the end, is actually what's preventing us from getting the diverse outcomes we say we want.
So what would a new vision for merit look like? Well, the paper suggests we need a bigger, more collective view. So instead of just looking at someone's past performance, what about their future potential? Instead of just looking at their individual skills, how about we ask how they'll make the whole team better? And maybe we should think about how hiring this person serves the organization's broader mission, which might include having leaders who actually reflect the community they serve. It's not about throwing merit away, it's about making it bigger and better.
Which leaves us with this one final thought to chew on. We are so obsessed with finding the best person for the job. But maybe that's been the wrong question all along. Maybe the question we should be asking is, who is the best person for the team, for our mission, and for our future? And just thinking about it that way, well, that might just change everything.